everybody to the Newt Tube for another live tasting here with Red Newt Cellars. We have, of course, our usual suspects, Meg Goodwin, assistant winemaker, Heather O'Grady Evans, our front of house manager, and who doesn't have much of a front of house these days, and social media coordinator, Rebecca, our brand manager, and Kelby, our winemaker, and our special guest, Etinosa Emokpae from Friday, Saturday, Sunday in Philadelphia. So thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
So actually, I'm going to start. Eddie, fill in our folks about what you do in Philadelphia and a little bit about yourself and the restaurant.
Sure. Yeah, so I am currently the wine director at Friday, Saturday, Sunday in Philadelphia. Originally from New York, but been in Philly about 4 years. Just kind of waiting until the restaurants reopen, but I've been lucky enough to have wonderful sessions like these to keep my palate well trained. So yeah.
Okay. Did I hear you say you're an awesome, like a fanatical Riesling fanatic?
Yes, I am super into Riesling. And these wines really, really are a treat. Definitely for me, the Mosel is, the godland or the motherland, if you want to say, but these wines really are a treat. So yeah.
Oh, great. Well, we have two wines tonight, both 2013 Rieslings. We have our 2013 Riesling Reserve and our 2013 barrel fermented Riesling. Very different wines. Mm-hmm. And 2013 was actually kind of my a crossover year in the cellar. I was still in the cellar, but Kelby was doing everything. I was just sort of slyly looking over his shoulder to make sure he didn't mess things up, which didn't. And Meg's was also kind of back and forth between cellar and front of house in 2013. So Meg's and Kelby were both part of this wine. Or actually, it was all three of us were. So let's kick it right off with this 2013 Reserve. And somebody might ask, what the hell does Reserve mean? But we can talk about that. The wine. Cheers.
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 I don't think I've tasted this 2013 Reserve Riesling in probably 5 years. And it's really delicious and bright and vibrant and youthful.
Super zippy. Like my mouth is just watering immediately, but really
I'm salivating over here.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. And again, just to think of like that age, it's 7 years old, and you still have such like kind of like zippiness to it, to the fruit, and I don't know. This is perfect for the hot summer, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yep. The only thing more refreshing than this would probably be a PBR with a lime in it. Around here, we call that actor lemonade. Who knew?
Yeah.
So 2013. Why don't you fill people in on 2013, Kelby? We've had a few 2013s lately, but it's always worth repeating because it was a kind of an unusual or atypical harvest, I think, in the Finger Lakes.
Yeah, it was. The weather was strikingly easy. It was pretty moderate. We don't have many years where we say that about. I think it's fair to say. It was pretty even going weather-wise. Had rain, but not too much. Not too hot of temperatures. The biggest thing that I think most of us remember from 13 was really heavy yields. Lots of fruit, and nothing compared to what we saw in 17 a couple of years later. But it was there was a challenge with how much was going to come into the cellar. Fortunately, there wasn't a challenge with the quality. We had a really nice harvest. We could hang fruit pretty late into the season and really let things come to full maturity flavor-wise out in the vineyard. But I would say kind of across the board, it was tended to be a little bit lower octane of a harvest, not as high sugars, really good flavors, pretty crisp acid. And I think the fun thing with both of these wines is that they show ways in which on the winemaking side, we could take, what was really good starting material and kind of help shape it in a way that filled in the pieces that we thought might be missing from the season itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I know my internet connection might have like lagged, but I guess for me, what is your kind of designation of reserve for your wines?
Oh.
Oh boy.
That
I,
big
I
one?
guess, oh, we're,
Ultimate question.
yeah, we don't use that term anymore.
Yeah.
Because now we're really focusing on single vineyard wines, which is really does have a very clear definition. Well,
Yeah.
actually, different people use it in different ways. Ours is very clear in our minds that it's a wine from a certain place that actually has a connection to that place in the way it expresses in the glass and the way it expresses its personality. So, single vineyard reserve, we used that for a few years, and it wasn't. It's not a certain like number of months in the barrel
Yeah.
or any particular aspect of the wine that makes it deserve that title, but rather we use that term for lack of a better one to designate something that we felt was really special. And in our case, often our reserve wines weren't a certain vineyard, but were an assemblage of multiple lots of wines. So it's really a kind of winemaker craft after harvest. Our winemaking generally is done in this kind of a very individual manner. Our reds, especially, where every single barrel comes off, literally comes off the press and is different all the way through the winter. And with the Riesling, we might have had, I remember doing the blending of this, Kelby. I bet we had at least a dozen or so different lots of Riesling from different vineyards, different press fractions, fermentations. And it was really a matter of conceptualizing what we thought would be the really incredible expression of the vintage and assembling it from those components. And that's what we call reserve.
Okay, cool.
And I think is the 13 the last reserve?
I believe so. Yeah.
It's not coincidental. I would say that 13 was the first vintage of the Knoll, a bottling of that wine, which we've tasted on here, and which has, from that vintage forward, kind of became, I guess, what we would consider usually our top dry Riesling. But I think, this wine's beautiful and this style is beautiful. It's a really interesting marriage of the vineyards and the terroir with kind of winemaking ideas of how to blend across these different vineyards to make, I remember when we were blending it, the goal was to make something that would age beautifully and was really, lean and tight and fresh and wanted time to open up and bottle. And this is certainly justified it. I mean, it's also justified that I think most of us forgot we made it until about 3 months ago when we found it in the warehouse. We're like, oh, well, we never released this wine. Whoops.
Yeah, and we still haven't released it. I mean, other than it being available on our website, for shipping. Of course, free shipping with 6 bottles or more. Plug. And it really is beautiful.
Yeah, these are one of the wines for me, like Riesling. I've always been a fan of decanting if I can. I found like when I opened this up first, maybe like 15 minutes before we started, like it was still like a little tight, but I would just love to like put this in a decanter and just let it kind of sit out for a while just to see how those aromatics would develop and whatnot. It's a really beautiful one, but yeah.
I find it interesting. I'm going to reference oddball or not wines that aren't in this tasting, unfortunately. But looking at the blend composition of this wine, it's about 83% Tango Oaks, and it would have been that Tango Oaks lot that made the Tango Oaks bottling in its entirety that we've tried recently. And in comparison, I find this notably younger in its progression. I think the Tango Oaks is like the 13 vintage of Tango Oaks is at a really beautiful like secondary development point right now. A lot of like nice toast and mineral, supporting the fruit. Whereas this wine, I still find isn't at that point in its secondary development. It's still kind of coming up into that ramp.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you did your blend homework, so you can answer this question with authority. But didn't we end up using a fair amount of one of the KJR fermentation with that sort of press high phenolic fraction to tighten it up, maybe 10% or so?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. There's a little bit of that to rein it in. And then there's, I mean, it's pretty heavily Tango Oaks otherwise. There's like mostly Tango Oaks, some of the Aussie or the KJR, and then a few percent of the older Riesling plantings, the Harlan block at Oklahoma. And then like it says 1% Sawmill North, and that is possible. It's also possible that that's just like a weird, blending glitch. Or
Harvest
something.
brain note.
Yeah, like
Now,
1% ended up in.
LB, wasn't the 13 KJR Riesling made from the last pressings of the Tango Oaks?
Okay.
All right, so it's really heavily Tango Oaks driven. And then you've got that older block from Oklahoma.
Yeah, yeah. The one at least without really diving in, which I didn't sift through all the PDF printouts from Winemaker's Database. It tells me that it's about 83% Tango. That could be 70% is the Tango Oaks and 13% was KJR, but it just lumps it all together because it was the same vineyard site.
Yeah. Well, this other wine, also the 2013 Riesling, it's quite a bit different. Different in many ways. I mean, look at this. Look at this difference. Right? Beautiful, beautiful contrast there. Yeah. So this is I think this was only one barrel lot, 1 or 2 barrels. I don't recall.
Just one. Yeah.
Yeah. So and I know that subsequent to 2013, Megs has done a number of these small lot sort of single 2-barrel projects. So maybe you can sort of fill people in about this wine, Megs.
Yeah, sure. So 2013, since we did actually have a little bit more crop load, I think gave us the opportunity to be a little bit experimental with some of the juices that we had. So it was really, to my recollection, the first year that we had started putting any whites of significance in barrel at that point. So this was one of the first ones that went into the barrel. I think there was some Pinot Gris in barrel as well. But yeah, it was a 1 barrel kind of trial, kind of see what would happen fermentation kinetics wise, texturally, what would kind of develop with some time, and pretty neutral barrels. It wasn't designed to impart lots of tannin or anything. But it was left in there for quite some time on Foley's, which has become much more standard winemaking for us as years have gone by. But I think what resulted is just this beautiful kind of unctuous wine that has a little bit more calling for food with it.
Was there any sort of wine or in particular that you had in mind in creating this?
Good question.
Or
I think we were really interested in exploring Riesling in neutral cooperage, or neutral oak, I should say. And the trick is getting oak that's actually neutral for Riesling. That's so we were fortunate to have 1 barrel and 13 that we could actually trial it with, and we were pleased with how it turned out. And then kind of in subsequent years, we really ratcheted up. Not necessarily our neutral holdings, because they're really hard to find. We've bought things that have had Chardonnay in them for 4 years from California, and you put Finger Lakes Riesling in, and it smells like a wooden plank.
Yeah.
So you still have to break in even old barrels with just how extreme Riesling can be in its aromatic extraction. But there was an idea of trying to find a way to impart more texture to the wine. It certainly, as a young wine, this would have been quite the contrast to the Reserve. The Reserve would have been quite lean and taut, and this would have been a little bit heftier. I think it's, as they've aged, they're kind of merging a little bit more towards the middle. But
well, yeah, the texture for me is you definitely succeeded in that. It has like this beautiful kind of like waxiness to it, which is not something that I am certainly used to in Riesling. And I don't actually really drink. I've had 1 barrel fermented Riesling, maybe from like Dr. Lucen, but It's never really been a style for me particularly that I was like, into, but this, for me, it hits all those things, and without taking away those kind of the aromatics from Riesling, which is, and I assume, did you block mallow in this? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, just by sulfur addition, there are other like wonkier things you can use, but this was just the sulfur. It's also probably one of the only times I was looking at the notes, the rare usage of VL1 in our cellar for a yeast. Like, I don't think that was if Bob Medill is watching, that was a Bob Medill special. It was, I mean, it worked well, but it was, I remember this being really like pungently floral and almost like plasticine as a young wine, even in bottle. Like, it was really not problematic, but it definitely wanted age in the bottle before it was time to show it. And that held on for a few years. Like, this is worlds different than what I remember from before.
Yeah, there's very little discernible oakiness, if you will, in the nose or the palate. It's more of, at this point, a sort of a textural and aromatic conversion of some sort. And I'm dwelling on this. At the last tasting, we were talking about biscuity characters, and sort of this Aussie kind of biscuit term. Is this biscuit? This kind of, because it's kind of vanilla cookie kind of thing. I'm not up on biscuity.
It's not overtly so. I wouldn't.
No.
Yeah.
I mean,
Their best.
that might be a word that I would like. It might be a descriptor that I would use in the background, but like, I usually think of biscuity as like pretty straight on.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, this is more leaning into that beeswax kind of lanolin character.
Yeah. Definitely more of like a Shannon quality than straight up like biscuit, but
And these are really fun to have side by side.
Yeah, definitely.
It's fun.
I've actually, a lot of times when we're talking about these wines with customers in the tasting room, it's very hard for people to wrap their head around why, in the name of all that there is, we bother to put Riesling into a barrel. And it can be a bit of a tough sell. And so one of the things that you kind of, we like to experiment. I mean, it's always great to have a stainless steel fermented Riesling, and you have them and you know what the taste is like, but sometimes it's fun to like push the envelope and see what you get. And it's always amazing to watch where their mindset goes from, oh my God, I'm about to taste a Riesling that was put into a barrel, to what they actually experience when they taste the wine. Like, wait a minute, this isn't heavily oaked. It's like, no, it's not. And to be able for them to truly step outside of their comfort zone to taste that is always amazing. It's wonderful to see the light bulb go off when they taste it, and then to also watch them go, now what do I put that with for food?
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure that that's something they want to just have when they're hanging out on the deck down by the lake. They're usually wrapping their heads around, okay, this requires a meal. It's a little fatter. It's a little meatier.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of meal, it's almost dinner. And as you know, we usually wrap these tastings up with talking about food and wine. And boy, we have a couple really distinctive, but kind of wines that have a parallel personality here. Of course, the same vintage, largely the same vineyard. What the barrel fermented? Which vineyard did that come from? That Tango, yeah. So Meg, since I think I've determined, this always confuses me, that you're immediately to my left, I think, on the actual stream. So why don't we start with you? What do you have planned for dinner?
Well, I really had no idea what I wanted to make at one point, but then I just remembered I've got ravioli that I made last weekend. There's a freezer that has chev, blueberries, basil, and some lemon zest in the filling. And I think we're going to use a little bit of one of these Rieslings and do like kind of a white wine butter sauce to go on top of it.
That sounds great. How about you, Heather?
Well, the first thing I'm going to do is crack open some cheese that I've been waiting. It's been aging like crazy.
It's always very interesting.
No, cheese. That's me. So we're gonna have a little cheese first, and then I'm gonna do a lighter pasta today. I've been trying to be a little bit better about eating what the doctor would like me to eat. So I have a white wine sauce that I want to do. I'm going to put a little bit of pasta in there, and then we're going to add some peppers, some mushrooms, and keep it nice and light.
Yeah. How about you, Kelby?
I've got, we're going to do some grilling tonight.
Nice.
And not entirely sure what we'll settle on for grilling, but I know that we're going to make fennel and grapefruit salad on the side, which is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Always tasty. I'm a sucker for all things fennel. Like if you put fennel on a dish, I'll probably purchase it. So both of these wines, I think will have both the acid, but also the body to stand up to a relatively tough salad in some ways. So.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Eddie? What do you have planned?
Well, I'm thinking, I kind of changed what I was going to do with having opened these wines. I think Korean barbecue is in order, maybe, or Korean fried chicken. And then I was thinking literally with I'm not going to cook it today, but maybe I'll cork this and do it tomorrow with a barrel fermented like pork Milanese. Like, I just think like the fried pork with the texture with this would be kind of really awesome. So, yeah.
How about you, Rebecca?
Yeah, I guess we're gonna do some grilling as well. I've got some swordfish that I'm gonna throw on, but I don't know what I'm gonna serve it with. I've been listening to your ideas and seeing if I could steal something. Maybe grilled fish over mash, or maybe a salad. I don't know yet. I don't know. I'll drink the reserve Riesling as I decide.
Yeah, I think I have a similar plan. Definitely grilling. It's such a beautiful day. We'll get the fire lit, and then we have a couple bone-in chicken breasts, so a little bit of marinade of some sort. And then we went to the farmer's market this morning and got this beautiful, nice, sturdy kale that's going to go on a really hot fire. And I have to figure out what to do with the yellow oyster mushrooms that I picked up to tie it all together.
Nice. Sounds great.
Yeah. So with that, I have to have one more sip here. I can have to choose which to sip.
No, it's
so yeah. Well, so thanks for joining us, everybody. Thank you, Eddie, for joining us again.
Thank you.
It's been great to have you.
Yeah.
And I think it's a wrap. So
All right.
thanks
so much,
Cheers.
guys. Cheers. Have a good night.
Cheers, everyone.
Oh, wow.